I am on the Delphi.org podcast profile. Yep.
And we're live.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Let's see, which stream am I sending here? Looks like it's mostly you right now. Let's see.
Which
it's not giving me the preview. Interestingly.
Well, I'm seeing us. I'm seeing me with you in a small window.
Ah, all right. Well, there we go then.
Yep, and it just froze. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Technology is wonderful.
Yeah, it is. That's interesting. Why is it?
I did a refresh. Looks like it's moving again, but a little bit behind us. Okay. Looks good, just you're tiny on the screen.
I'm tiny?
Yeah.
I'm very smart.
You're really tiny.
Yeah, for some reason my preview is not coming up. So, all right, well, we're good. So, welcome everybody to another episode of the podcast at Delphi.org. This is Jim McKeith, and the big guy up, I think, that direction? Am I pointing in the right direction? Is Craig Chapman.
It is me indeed. Hello. And Ian says it's Craigovision. We just zoomed in on me right now.
Let's see. I think that's going to be... I don't know why the... every time I think we got this thing working out, it does weird stuff like this again, where now I don't get a preview anymore. So, alright. David's not here today because we're talking about game engines and graphics engines and stuff like that, which is kind of Craig's domain. Although last week, David did talk about his Maze generation book work he did with that book. What is it? Programmer's Guide to Mazes or whatever it was. So, which is kind of cool. Certainly something I'd like to do as far as putting that into some game stuff. But today we're going to look at some of the cool stuff Craig's got going on with games. Oh, I guess first, I have some sites I was going to share.
Yes. You actually had a list of game engines that you've been looking at, don't you?
I do. And, weird. Let's see.
I'm still on my nicotine here.
Why isn't my preview working here? Alright, well, I'm going to hope that this is the right view of me.
I'm seeing you in a tiny little blue box with me still big on the screen, but I'm looking at the delayed
You're looking at the delayed.
Yeah.
Apparently I need to come up with a different setup. Okay, so it should be showing my screen here. The first tab here is actually your website, which we're going to jump back here to in a minute, where we look at some of the stuff you have going on with the
game. Yeah. Yeah. I see polygon rotating on the screen there. And judging by the window sizes, it looks like this might be targeted at mobile output. Oh, it just went big. There we go.
Take the screen.
Look at that. You're,
that's kind of cool.
Traveling through a star field. That's quite pretty.
Yeah. So under advanced, elastic.
Oh, that's fun. That's an elastic constraints demo, physics demo.
Yeah, and I can go full screen.
Yay. See, I'm a long way from all this stuff in my system yet.
And he does have a couple games here as well.
Click mouse to start a chain reaction. That's cool. So, demonstration there of basically a particle engine doing some fun stuff, which is nice.
And then Astro Blaster game here.
The preview is all wrong. Yeah, You're still showing in a tiny window, Jim.
What's wrong?
You're still showing in a tiny window. We're looking at my big face, and you in a tiny little window. Your screen's in that window too. And to be brutally honest, people don't want to see my big face. Wasn't ready for my... I wore this t-shirt for you today, Ian. Binary, it's as easy as 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. Because I know you like my developer-themed shirts. Right now there's no audio for Jim, and I'm still big. And it freezes. Oh, lovely.
Well, I don't have multiple tabs open.
Well,
Okay, I think says I'm receiving data now on YouTube, and it says streaming, although I still don't have a preview. My goodness.
If it's
This is being
a necessary option, you could share your screen on Skype, and I could share my desktop on my face, which would stream you up. Oh, now I lost Jim on Skype. Okay. But I see him on YouTube. Okay, so for anyone that can hear me, Jim is telling me that his Mac kernel panicked, so things went horribly wrong his end. I'm going to go ahead and give him a minute or two to get back online. Alright, I am going to call you back, Jim. There we go, I have you back. Hi.
back kind of kernel panic.
Okay, so it looks like Ian's telling me he's seeing you the other end now, so it looks like things are back up and running.
Alright, so I'm going to start burning. It should. I'm guessing maybe it was the virtual machine was giving me trouble. I don't know. So, no virtual machine anymore. So anyway, Jared, work on this 2D game engine. Looks pretty, and yeah.
So I'm a slight bit behind you because you're not sharing screen on Skype now. Just yeah. I don't need to kill your computer doing it though.
Sure. screen.
DRes Games. That looks
So that's
interesting. Maybe I'm just gonna
DRes.game.
stop developing my engine and use that one.
Uh,
Kidding, of course.
Development.com, which has been big popular community for game other languages as well. They have links to other like Free Pascal, SDL, PPS, etc. on here. So if you're into game development, it might be worth checking out.
They are a lot of fun. They've been around for a long time. I've been not a particularly active member, but monitoring it. And you know, I can remember the early days when they were doing tutorials on how to get a game loop running in Windows API calls. So they've been around for a long time and got a lot of great stuff on there.
Yeah, yep.
Including the Castle game engine, which is one of the bigger projects on there.
Which I have a tab for. So Quad Games, they're making their Quad engine, but they also have, based on that Quad engine, they have a game called Blast Off, which is released in the Steam store. And I think we've talked about this before, but this is all written in Delphi. Nice looking 2D game engine here with cool effects. So their game engine is really in 0.81. Oh, and then that's the Quad engine site if you want more information on that one. 0.9 Diamond. So
excellent.
Anyway, there's that one. Let's see, and then then this one. Oh, this is, so they have a live stream they do where they're working on their game and their engine and stuff like that, where you can check it out.
Which one is that? The Quad engine?
Yeah, this is the Quad engine.
Oh, I wouldn't mind joining on that channel. Be worth watching.
Yeah, they're from Russia. The two developers are MVPs.
Do they speak English on the stream?
I don't know. When I've watched it, they haven't been speaking.
Okay.
They've been just coding, which I understand code. I don't know if you're speaking. I know, actually, I've chatted with them in English.
They are English speaking.
So I don't know. They know English at least. English is better than my Russian. Let's put it that way.
That's a channel I'm willing to follow quite frequently.
ZenGL, which is a cross-platform OpenGL system, been around for a while. Written in Pascal.
I actually really like this one. So it's an open source engine with it's written in Free Pascal, I think, and bindings for Delphi, but it can deploy to, as you can see there, Linux, Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. It is both. It has both 2D and 3D code within it. It's predominantly for 2D rendering, but it has a lot of code in there that can be extended for 3D rendering. But more importantly, there's some of the nice stuff in there are bindings to, for example, libtheora for playing back video and audio and video playback in there, which is really nice. It's it's a feature of an engine that's one of the more tricky ones to get in. So, yep, very nice engine.
Very cool. And then Benjamin has got some libraries here, actually. There's the Pascal Vulcan, which is the Vulcan header generator for Vulcan that I did.
Well, yeah, so Vulcan's a next-gen 3D API, so if you consider DirectX and OpenGL, those are kind of the previous generation, and Vulcan's the next-gen. Not that either of the older ones are being deprecated. Actually, DirectX 12 is on the same level as Vulcan, and OpenGL is going to be around probably forever. There's a lot of historic support for it. But what Vulcan and DirectX 12 allow you to do, which is kind of interesting, is do your own memory management and your own marshalling of the PCI bus. And you can do that in a multi-threaded system if you want. So with the previous versions of DirectX and OpenGL, all of your rendering had to happen in one thread. And so all of your other threads, they might be doing simulation or audio or whatever, but anything that had to go to the screen, they would dump over to the rendering thread. And then the rendering thread managed memory marshalling and everything else. Vulcan and DirectX changes that and gives you a lot closer control over the memory management and threading. So you can actually get much higher performance out of these if you're, because OpenGL is going to do its best attempt to offer the performance for your app, but it's not written for your app specifically. It's written as a general purpose API. Now with Vulcan, you can tailor its behavior to your application, so you can get much better performance from it or from DirectX 12. And the other thing that I really love about Vulcan, which it's the way I think headers should be done, but I've never seen it done this way before. And what they do is the header is documented in XML. So if you want to create a header for Pascal, you do what Benjamin's done here and create a generator that runs through that XML file and generates the Pascal source for the header, which means you don't have headers. Header translations are a thing of the past with this API because you just create a generator and generate a header. You don't have to translate from, say, C++ or something else to Pascal. So really love how they've done that. Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah. So if you want to, you can come out and take a look at his generator, or I guess it sounds like you can write your own, although might as well take a look at his and get started with that.
If a generator exists, use it. No.
Correct. Then you have to write everything yourself.
That's not true. I'll write things myself when I think I can get some enjoyment of it.
So StoneQuest is a game that's in development. I've talked about this one before. And this is
Zuderman.
Zuderman. What he goes by, but I know his name. And anyway, awesome game, all written in Delphi. And I have to admit, I'm not a hardcore gamer currently. I've done, and what I have seen, this is cutting edge game engine he's working on here.
This is a pretty fine game engine, so a lot of what you're seeing is not the best representation of what it can do, but the lighting effects and the what we're seeing there, the particle engine effects and stuff like that, is all really cutting edge stuff. This is kind of a demo reel of it in a sense. So yeah, fantastic game engine, and I understand this gentleman's been working on it since I think the first version was for Delphi 2009. That's when he started working on it. So since the release of 2009, probably back in 2008. So yes, a huge amount of stuff in this engine already. It's a very complete system.
Yeah, he's got. Here it is. Yep. Where he's going to change the time of year, the leaf changing color.
And this is something that I'm very keen to get into my engine going forward. This is based on what he's doing there with the trees is effectively, although it may not go under this name, it's effectively procedural generation. So or algorithmic generation of content. So by tuning a couple of parameters, tweaking parameters here and there, you can change the weather conditions, the foliage. I've seen examples of shaders, not for this engine, but examples of shaders that will render out a metal texture, so like a shiny brush metal texture, but as you adjust the age, they go from shiny to rusty. So you can age your materials in the game world, and this is something I'm keen to start looking at when I get further along with my own developments. So.
Jedi SL, Pascal headers for SL, which SDL is a 2D engine for graphics.
Yep, and audio, in fact.
And audio, that's right, yeah.
Media layer. So this has been around for a long time and has a huge amount of capabilities in it for that reason as well. I don't want to misspeak on it, but I don't believe it to be a cutting-edge system. I don't believe it's something that's necessarily gets a huge amount of development, but I know that a huge amount of people use it. So if you're just getting started building games, this is a great place to start.
Yep. Okay. And then here's the Castle engine, which we mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. Which we see, here's an update from February.
This is in progress engine.
This month. In progress. And you can check it out on on GitHub, which I have not done anything with Castle, but this is some cool looking screenshots here from it.
Yep. I remember, so the Castle engine has also been around for a long time. I mean, any engine that looks reasonably complete has been around for a long time because it takes a long time to write these things. The interesting thing with the Castle engine, he's now, the developer, I forget the gentleman's name, unfortunately, he's now focusing on building tools for content creation and managing the scene graph and all that kind of stuff, and integration of those tools with the development tool chain. So it's at the point where the engine is, I would guess, it's almost fully complete, and it's now time for tooling to make it easier to use for entry level into gaming. So yeah, very, very good, capable engine. I like this one a lot. Not really much else to say. It's a project worth watching and following. Oh, also, he...
I just noticed in here too, they say the iOS, so it's a cross-platform as well.
Engine, yeah. And he'll actually, so you can request, it's interesting the way that this gentleman's working, and I really wish I could remember his name. Maybe you'll find it. There it is.
Here it is right here.
Michaelis. Okay, so he actually states in one of his videos that he has a Patreon channel where you can help fund by subscribing to the Patreon channel and seeing videos of the engine. But also, if you are one of the higher paying funders, or if you're willing to make a donation, he will actually build a demo of the technology for you. And there are certain sensible limitations on that, of course. He's not going to build a game for you. But he'll build an example of how to use it on iOS or Android, or how to do a particular effect or something that for you. So yeah,
that's really cool looking.
Nice interaction, and yeah, very capable engine. I love the Doom, the Doom replica, Doom demo.
Wow.
Yeah, this thing is very capable. I believe there are some commercially released games using it at this point as
well. Someone told me one of commercially released games that were fairly popular that are written in Delphi. And so there are some out there. It's one of those things oftentimes, and I've had as well that's like, hey, I know company X is using Delphi for some really cool stuff. Can we tell people? I'm like, no. It's against policy. So unfortunately we can't say some of the amazing cool places where Delphi is being used, but it is being used for some cool things.
One of the really irritating things about that is, so the game industry proper, if you talk to the literally the AAA companies, of which there are, 4, 5, these companies talk about C++ because they are based on C++ engines. But then as soon as you step, there's not a big drop-off between those companies and the best of the indie, or the best of the startups that came out of the indie sector. And a lot of them are using Delphi, we have in our contracts when we sell Delphi, I don't know if it's still true, but until last year at least, in our contracts we state that we won't use any of the customer's material to advertise our product. So not using their logos, not naming them unless we have permission to do so, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So we're not allowed to go out and say, hey, did you know they're using it? So yeah, there's a lot of game engines that are actually, or game systems games that are running based on Pascal and Delphi code that you just wouldn't know are based on that.
Yep. Yeah. There was a big game a while ago that the developer came out and talked about why. Oh my goodness, you're using Delphi.
It was one of the big titles, wasn't it?
I remember what it was. It was really
maybe one of the fantasy type. Or
something like that. I remember it was kind of a RPG type game,
right?
And talked about that, and talked about a lot of stuff we know about why we love Delphi. Just that the code's easier to read and such like that. I was actually reading an interesting article. I'll send it to you, Craig, on craftsmanship, whether coding was a craft or not. And one of the criticisms this author had was that languages and frameworks don't last more than a couple years, and then they're gone. And actually, I was looking at a list of language decline right now, big time, and it's amazing. Some of the ones that were just a few years ago, where it's like, oh my goodness, these are amazing, are just like falling off the charts because fortunately, the industry I think I love about Delphi. First of all, backwards compatibility, right? I have a VM with Delphi 1 in it. Stupid and do. Well, that would be too strong a word. But you know, if you think about it a little bit about what you're doing, you can with other versions of Delphi all the way up to
right.
a mobile application.
I see Ian's saying that Doom, the original Doom, was written in Pascal, which doesn't surprise me a lot, actually. So I think Doom was id Software, if I remember right. And yeah, written in Pascal, and I would expect, actually, because the compiler at the time would likely have been Turbo. So that's a cool little thing. Now, the thing that surprised me about that is it then moved over to C++ for Quake, but a port of Quake was done, porting it to Pascal. So you can actually download the source code for Quake in Pascal as well. And around the same time, and I'm going to forget the name now because we're talking 15 years ago, 15 or 20 years ago, but around the same time I was following some tutorials online, I mean it was bulletin board systems back then, and these tutorials would create a Doom-style game engine in Pascal using inline assembler and doing all of the translations yourself because there was no 3D hardware. So yeah, back in my early pre-college and college days, I was doing a lot of stuff with manually doing polygon animation, you know. And I remember, actually, little anecdote for you.
So the last couple links,
so a friend of mine that I went to college with was espousing Visual Basic, which of course Delphi was competing with at the time, and saying how wonderful it was. And I remember that I went home and I actually opened up Turbo Pascal because that's what I had access to. I didn't have Delphi at the time. And I wrote manually a rotating cube demo with Fong Shader and everything else. And I come back in, and the next day he grabs Visual Basic and he drags and drops a cube demo together in like 2 minutes and says, "Yeah, what's so special about what you did?" And I just remember biting my tongue on I wrote this manually. So maybe you're right. Maybe I always have just decided to write things for myself.
Yeah, although, you know, I remember back when, you know, it was VB versus Delphi, and no one talks about VB anymore. What happened?
Yep. VB lost to Delphi. Delphi was winning all of the awards and making VB become somewhat obscure. And then, of course, we had we'll call them the Troubles. And it took us a while to get back on top, but Delphi is actually now beating Microsoft products to Microsoft's own features again, so it's back on top.
Yeah, lines of language. One of the things I love about Delphi is the commitment to backwards compatibility.
The win for me is, sorry, I don't mean to keep it. The win for me is the language syntax, because you can compare framework to framework, but that's not really even fair. You know, it's not comparing apples to apples. Look at the underlying syntax and what that can do, and Delphi is just so much nicer to look at.
Pages here I have. This is a EFG code. Link's pretty old. Here, 98. But I found a lot of times there's full references and stuff in here that I've grabbed, and like, how do you do this? And you can find something. And then here's the Graphics 32 library as well, which is a pretty popular graphics library that I know people are still using.
Graphics 32? Wow.
You know, I did not know they were, but someone just messaged me the other day about them and they're doing with it.
That's
like,
pretty cool. I mean, I
didn't know that was still around. But yeah, here's just updated.
I didn't even realize it was still a thing, still existed. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you know, that kind of goes to what we were just saying, though, right?
You needn't. I don't have much in the way of things to show, but I'll pull up my blog for you. So, let me. Well, either or. I'll just switch to screen and camera, so I'm little. There you go. So, yeah, I guess you want to talk about my little game engine project. So, it is brand new. I'm going to go ahead and... it's called Dark Glass. And when I say brand new, I'm talking... I think we're 16 days old with the project now, so it's really new. I can get the links from the first page. So, Dark Glass is the name of an engine that I've just started building. And I'm live streaming the development of the engine. And my YouTube channel, if you just go to youtube.chapmanworld.com from my blog, I've aliased it because I don't currently have enough subscribers to change my name on YouTube. So if you're watching this, go subscribe and help me out. But yes, the idea here is that I want to write a game, which codenamed right now is The Canopy. And because writing a game of the scale that I'm aiming for is a huge undertaking, I decided to break it down into the game proper and the game engine, and to make the game engine an open source project which is hosted up on GitHub. I've got a link right here for it, so you can go download, make clones of, and work with the engine. Now, as it is right now, this engine does very little. I just put in the threading model, and it's not even the complete threading model yet, but the threading model with a messaging system so that you can communicate with the subsystems of the engine. And I have the ability to run a main loop on Windows and open a window, and I'm just working on integrating Android deployment. So this is going to deploy to all of the Delphi targets and possibly more. So the supported targets officially at first will be the Delphi targets there, but I've considered things like, for example, deploying this to Xbox. And although deploying to Xbox is typically done with proprietary Microsoft tooling, it's a proprietary tool chain, my understanding is you can deploy Windows-style DLLs and consume them. So what I've done is I've made two versions of the binding for this library. One version is statically bound and the other is dynamic. So you could theoretically in the future deploy out to other targets as well. The rendering, initially I think I'm going with OpenGL. I'm looking at Vulkan, I want to do Vulkan, but I don't know enough about Vulkan yet, so I'm going to try and move in that direction through experimentation, but effectively it will have a replaceable renderer, so you should be able to put any API underneath the rendering. And yeah, all of this is open sourced, so give it a few more weeks or a couple of months and hopefully it will start to be something that's actually usable, even if only in a limited capacity. And then eventually I'm hoping to get contributions to this engine as well. Part of the reason for making it open source is to get some assistance building it. I'm not looking for contributions yet because the most efficient team size is a team of one. I want to get to a certain point with the development before I look for contributions there. But eventually this project will live on its own, and at that point I'll stop streaming the development. But until then, live streaming more or less every key press, every mistake I make. So yeah, you can get to watch along. It's not exactly the most enthralling thing to watch, but if you're curious, you can tune in anytime and watch a part of that happen.
You know, it's interesting. Your live. We were just looking at the quad engine guys are live streaming on the live. Mm-hmm. I really think YouTube's come a long way in being a good platform for that. Because it used to be if you wanted to do live streaming, you had to use one of the other platforms. But I think you have platforms anymore. It seems like
right. It's so YouTube's great for live streaming. It seems to have the occasional lag issue, and I've noticed in the past because a lot of the games that I play. The gamers will stream what they're doing and they'll stream it to both Twitch and YouTube. And what will happen is if there's a major worldwide event, like for example, a new president is inaugurated, then your stream will become second rate to the event coverage. So you'll get downgraded in bandwidth. But for the most part, they're pretty good for streaming, and obviously the podcast goes out over it. It goes quite well.
Ian was just pointing out Mixer, which I think is Mixer the site that lets you multiple channels. I can't remember. Splitter. I remember that I was looking at one a while ago because we tried to look at a way to do our webinar.
I see also in saying that any deployments of the Xbox will need to be code signed, and I believe you.
Streaming
I'm
to multiple platforms at once,
but post sign the DLL because the application itself will be a Visual Studio application that consumes the engine. So hopefully we can do that using the Visual Studio IDE. But the truth is, at this point, deployment to consoles is a theoretical future. I'm just trying to keep my options open for it. So, yeah.
Sure. Well, deployment anything that has an app store, whether it be iOS or different processes in place for that. So.
But also the other thing is that's the reason for the swappable renderer, because a lot of the on Microsoft Store, they almost insist that you're using DirectX as your API. I've never deployed something to the Xbox Store and going on third-party accounts, but I'm led to believe that you are almost forced, not entirely, but compelled to use DirectX. And if you're deploying to, say, Steam, well, Steam opens up cross-platform support, so you want to be using OpenGL or Vulkan. So having a pluggable renderer is going to be a big key feature to opening platforms up in the future. Right now, I'm at the point where if I can build, as I can, a DLL, a shared object, and a statically bound executable for whichever target, then I've got what I've got what I'm aiming for. And that's actually, I'll quickly show you the what I have so far.
Okay, cool.
So here I've got the target set to Windows, and I have the Dark Glass core, which is effectively where the game engine lives. I've then got a DLL wrapper around that core, so that's going to be a dynamically loadable. And then I've got the Dark Glass package, which is the headers or bindings, if you like, that's going to consume it. So what you do is you include in, and I think I'm going to remove this types unit going forward. I need it there right now, but that's going to be built into the Dark Glass unit. So what you do is you use this in this Dark Glass unit, you use this in the static or the dynamic binding, and if you use this the static binding, it will build an executable with everything included. If you include the dynamic binding, then it will try to bind to the DLL wrapper. And if I then change the target from Windows, see here, I just change it to Linux, well, now I'm binding to a shared object file instead. And theoretically, though I've not tried it, you can build the shared object for Android and deploy to Android that way if you wanted to as well, though I don't see why you would. You could just use the static binding for Android. And effectively what you get when you bind to the library, you will get, most of this is going to change, but effectively what you get is a message channel. So right now I'm getting the message channel to the platform subsystem. The platform subsystem abstracts you from the operating system, and then you can send messages into it. At the moment it understands only one message, and that message is go create a window. So message value at 0, go create a window, call send message, and that's going to send the message through the message channel, which is effectively thread safe. I've actually done nothing to make it thread safe. I'm basing its thread safety on atomic interactions. But you send this message in, and it tells the platform to go create a window, and then you enter the main loop. And the main loop is actually a subsystem of the threading engine, so it'll sit there in the main thread, looping, doing effectively nothing right now. And as I build this out, it'll, I'll add in the renderer, so when you want to send things to the renderer, you'll get a hook to the renderer subsystem and send messages to that instead. So this is going to let you sort of have this messaging system that interacts between the subsystems. So I'm just working on that now, and I started integrating with Android yesterday. And I've done some Android low-level stuff without FMX before, because this is all sub-FMX level. And I forgot about how to do the main message loop, and a lot of the APIs that I was binding to have actually changed somewhat. So I just went and looked up my old code and said, looper, I need to include a looper for the main message thread. Okay, so I'm working on the Android deployment, immediately after which I think I'm going to go for iOS and Mac deployment to get to, if I can get to a window on all of those platforms and Linux as well, then all that remains for the rendering side of things is to attach a rendering context to the window, and I can go start rendering graphics. and at that point I'll probably start writing a bunch of the non-visual subsystem stuff, so virtual file systems for loading resources and all that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, that's where we're at with it right now, very, very early stages.
Yeah, it's amazing how often that happens to me, where I'm like, I don't know how to do this, and I go look, it's like, oh wait, here's a blog post I wrote about how to do that. Wow, I knew how to do this at one point.
I was looking at how to do the Android deployment earlier, and I came across Stephen Ball's blog, and there's a video on it that says how to do low-level JNI interactions. I thought, oh great, I'll watch that. And I click play, and it's your voice.
I saw, don't remember anything about how to do that, so I'll have to go watch that one. I saw this, funny programmer meme that said something along the lines of, convinced you your memory was better and now it's disappointed you both, or something like that. And that's so true, is whenever you're doing something, or at least for me, I always feel like, yeah, I remember this, no problem. But later I'm like, I do not know what I was thinking here. But anyway, so Roland pointed out maybe I'm the victim of the new net neutrality fast lanes they're rolling out here in the States, and so I'm on the slow lane now, which could be. Although I think I need to. I know something I can do hardware-wise, so maybe I can improve this next time. It's in the podcast process. I got new studio lights here, which I can bring one of them up here on screen maybe so you can see it. It's cut. So this is going to be really bright. But I have 3 of these CFLs. I want LEDs, but the CFLs were a whole cheaper. And one up here and one up here that are in the umbrellas, so they're bouncing the light back down on me. And then the one behind me here for the green screen, which you can't see because
it's green.
Because it's green.
I like the backdrop behind you, the sci-fi thing going on there. It's pretty cool. Yeah,
so I got a few different ones of those. I might swap them out and go to the different ones. But I really like this one because it's kind of, and it's got like, or science fiction looking, and it's got like some code scrolling by, although it looks like C. So maybe make my own. It's got some Delphi code in there, so it's easier to read, right?
Code is code when you're talking about a sci-fi backdrop. It's fine.
Yeah,
Get some matrix stuff up there.
I guess I could do some hexadecimal. So, yeah. So yes, I have my MacBook Pro right here, and I have 2 screens for that, and then I have another screen here connected to it. It's their Mac actually. It's my old one that the touchpad working on, and I'm using a Elgato streaming box and my other monitor, and so everything goes to this other monitor. It gets sent through the stream box, and it's captured by this other computer. And the reason I did that is because when I'm capturing, it slows my system down, and so now all the capturing has been moved to this other computer here. But then unfortunately, there's no driver for OBS for the stream box I'm using, so that stream box is just displaying on the main screen, and then OBS is capturing that screen, combining it with my webcam with the green screen, and then sending that off to Go Lightstream, and then Go Lightstream with Craig's and off to YouTube.
Sounds like you've got far too complex a setup there, Jim.
It is far too complex a setup. Though, is I'm going to set up my own RTMP system here locally, and see if I can get you and David's streams coming here locally, and then composite that all together with OBS, and maybe make a better system.
Suggest something for you, because I think you have bandwidth issues from time to time. I'm actually putting it in the chat window right now. So there's a guy that I follow on YouTube, Linus, and he does a Linus Tech Tips
yes,
thing, which
I do watch him.
With. He did a video on a device that will take 2 different internet connections and bind them together, and it's not just load balancing, it actually gives you improved performance. So if you combine 2 50 meg streams, you'll get 100 meg going out. So
I think I saw that one. I do have like 100. I mean, I have quite a bit of internet. I think the issue is I just realized that. So I had this idea that I thought was brilliant. Is I'm internet sharing from my main Mac to the other Mac via a lightning cable. But I think what I'm going to do is instead run both the same router, because I think what I'm doing is, because that one's streaming, it's got to stream back through my Mac, and I bet I have a good connection between the two, but as far as getting from that one up to the internet, I bet that's where they're losing bandwidth. So this just occurred to me. I will hardwire that one with a Ethernet cable into my router, or not, actually it's into my switch.
And actually,
so Craig, when you move here to Idaho, you can come see how crazy my setup is here.
when I move there to Idaho, my one requirement is going to be that I am not on any, even a modern equivalent of DSL. I want cable or fiber. Give me a good big bit of copper to push data down.
Yeah, I'm on cable internet.
Right.
Which is, I went DSL for a while and it was just, but I'm on cable internet now.
I get up on DSL.
I think, yeah. Usually anymore, whenever trouble, it's because I've got wired improperly internally, which is kind of the way things go.
I seem to be the product recommendations today, but I found a device from Netgear at local Walmart, I think it was, in the tech bit. And one of the things, I think it's called a PL1000 or something like that. I'm going to see if I can find it. But yes, Powerline, Netgear Powerline 1000. This is a gigabit internet and Ethernet adapter that uses the earth cable in your house on your wiring, your home wiring, as an Ethernet cable. So it'll turn your earth line into a network cable. And the one thing I would say about this, I plugged it in. I wanted to get network out to the garage. I plugged it in, and it started working. There was no configuration, no real setup. You plug it in, it does its job, and it provides a perfectly good, stable internet connection. One of the highest recommendations I can give for a product is that it does what it says on the box. Yeah, I love this device for getting internet to parts of the house that would otherwise be Wi-Fi. What I don't have is I don't have that on my desktop right now. I'm wireless on the desktop, but I will be using that when I get moved up to Idaho.
So actually, I had not this one, but I had a similar one to this at one point, and it worked great for a little while, and then all of a sudden it started dropping packets like crazy, and I couldn't figure out why. And I tried to contact. It wasn't Netgear; it was somebody else. Anyway, it didn't work. I have it over here someplace. So I was looking to see if I could see it. What I did do since then, though, is I ran a Ethernet cable that comes out of the wall right here through. I have a straight shot. The modem is like 3 rooms that way, and I just drilled holes in the wall and ran it along, and there it comes out. So luckily, I was able to hide it. There's only one spot you can see it, where because right next to me is like a utility room, and then there's the other storage room that it goes through, and then there's like one hall that it cuts across stuff, but it's up in the corner, so you can't really notice it. But anyway, so yeah, I have a hard, because I found that the wireless is good like 90% of the time, but it does drop packets, even if you have a really good setup, which you don't usually notice when you're downloading stuff because buffer gets ahead, but when you're live streaming up, then that's where you start to have trouble. At least that's been my experience.
Actually, that is a good point about, Glenn raises a good point about the Powerline adapters, is that, so I've heard reviews of these things being used on very, very old wiring, and they still seem to do a pretty decent job of dealing with noise, actually. So that might not be such an issue, but what's more of an issue is the possibility of surges, because it says in the user manual you can't use these things through a surge protector. They must have some kind of surge protection in them, but I would guess that if a surge happens, it'll fry it'll fry the device rather than your hardware. So yeah, there might be a problem of electrical noise with them. I've heard of them working on very old electrical wiring, and frankly, I'd expect it to be reasonable in terms of continuity as long as there is an actual solid connection. It doesn't take much in the way of, if you look at the size of an Ethernet Cat5 or Cat6 cable, the actual strands are quite thin. It doesn't take much, but noise is potentially an issue on the line. So absolutely right, could be a problem, but this solved a problem for me, which was I'm actually in a rented building right now, and I didn't want to drill a hole through into the garage for my what is now a mining rig. It's an AI/mining rig. So I wanted to get internet out into the garage, and that's the way that I did it.
So here I don't know if I have a good way to do this. Let's see. There's I didn't put a plate on the wall yet, so there you can see. I don't know if you can see that on the webcam or not, but that's what the hole in the wall looks like. Anyway, all right.
But I'm sure it'll come up on the screen in a minute.
Yeah.
So, yes. And,
okay, so I think we're going to get to about wrap it up here. We're about top of the hour. And if we get talking about something else, then we'll be going for a while.
Yeah, we'll run over.
We'll run over.
Well, I'm
so
going back onto my live stream, I think. I'll probably go and get a quick bite to eat and then live stream the next bit of the dark glass stuff. So
oh, fantastic!
Yeah, so it may be an hour or so. So I had to apologise over the weekend because on Sunday I thought I had an hour. I had family in town and they were helping out with childcare and stuff, and I thought I had an hour. And then Gwen came and knocked the door and said, "Actually, you don't have an hour. We need you." So I went and dealt with that, and then yesterday we had internal training at Embarcadero, which was scheduled to end at noon, and I didn't get done till 3. So I had to apologise for missing the session. Today, at some point, probably after I go and get a bite to eat, I'm going to come back and continue the sessions, continue the streams.
Okay, so I just put a link to your YouTube channel in the chat window, so everybody can join you there in just a little bit and watch some development on dark glass.
Yep. If watching someone type into an IDE interests you, then go ahead and come and join me. But if you have better things to do, I don't blame you for not being there.
Yeah. I might join you. I do enjoy that to a degree. It's interesting. Especially if you're doing something else, right, and it's not too obtrusive, you can look over and see what's going on, and then look back to what you're doing, and just kind of sometimes you get, that break in what you're focused on, concentration right now. So,
yeah. Well, the other thing with
cool.
it is, for anybody that's interested in the project, go back and watch part 1. I do a little Q&A that covers a lot of this. But right now, it's not so much a collaborative effort. I'm more than happy to chat while doing it. But right now I'm just trying to get to where I want to get the engine, and then the collaboration will come later, because I want to make sure that I get a firm foundation before moving forward. So.
Okay, cool. All right, and then I will hopefully fix my network problems for next time and make things run smoother. At some point, I'm going to be done tweaking this. At some point, it will happen.
Honestly, Jim, I think you should go back to the... you somehow got all 3 streams to come in and mixed them at YouTube. You remember we had a dedicated RTMP server, and you somehow managed to mix all 3? Were you doing that? You were doing that in OBS, weren't you?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
I was receiving the OBS locally. So what I'm going to try and do is bypass, because I was using Linode, was an RBS server that was bouncing everything off of. I'm going to see if I can just run those locally, because I should have enough download bandwidth to handle your streams coming in.
Right.
Considering how much upload bandwidth it uses, because the ratio. Mm-hmm. So I should have enough for that. So I'll try and get that set up. I just got to, put it in the DMZ so you guys can access the IP address or NAT it or whatever and get that all working.
Well, why don't you just get 3 of those Raspberry Pis you bought, and have 2 of them receiving a stream, 1 from me, 1 from David, and the 3rd one mixing them. Just you bought all these little mini computers, and that would be a purpose for them, I figure.
I thought about that, but I have a desktop that probably has the power of 10 Raspberry Pis put together. So
right. I'm kind of being facetious, because I know that you run about 1 million things on your Mac all at once. I'm trying to dedicate servers in your home to the stream.
Yeah, well, I have another computer over here, another desktop over here that I'd use for various things. It's a Windows box, so it's reliable. No, I'm just kidding. And then I have my stack of Linux computers over there that I need to do something with. But lots of fun. All right, yep. So it's top of the hour.
All right.
Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks, Craig, for your presentation, and I will try and put some links to all the different content I put on we shared, so that you can find them on the the website. So check out Delphi.org for those, and I'll try and add the link for that to the YouTube channel. All right?
Excellent. All right, thanks.
Thanks so much. Talk to everybody later. Bye.